Wofai chiefs lay claim to Olubadan throne. That's found on page 3 of the Punch newspaper. I am next in rank, says Balogun of Ibadan land. King Bakers must install me as Odugade's successor. That's coming from Oyedije. That's on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. I bought 7 certificates for 100,000. That's from a fake loot doctor, and that's on page 4 and 5 of the Punch. Court orders federal government to produce Dasuki on February 16. That's on page 2. Ekweremadu loses bid to stop judgment. That's on page 3 of the Punch newspaper. Ekweremadu loses bid to stop judgment. Nothing wrong with handcuffing Metu, says Oshomole. That's on page 12. Duke lifted $24 billion crude oil without contracts. That's coming from the PPMC, page 29. Duke lifted $24 billion crude oil without contracts. That's coming from the PPMC. 470 million naira lost daily to gas pipeline attacks. That's coming from the federal government, and they're crediting it rather to Port Harcourt, Kaduna refineries, and that's on page 29. I'll take that again. 470 million naira lost daily to gas pipeline attacks. That's coming from the federal government, and it's credited to Port Harcourt, Kaduna refineries. That's on page 29. Very quickly, the stories which have been making front headlines is about the arrest of the spokesperson of the PDP, that's Olisa Metu. Now he was put in handcuffs, and Adams Oshomole had come out to say there's nothing wrong with that, but different sections from the PDP have said that. Why would you have to get Olisa Metu to the court in handcuffs when Dasuki, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, whose offense was even more grave as alleged than Olisa Metu, wasn't taken to court in handcuffs? And a few other persons who have been summoned to court from the EFCC were not in handcuffs. Why Olisa Metu? Do you think it's also one-sided?
Well, I do not know the reason why Olisa Metu was actually handcuffed. My take as an interested party in Nigeria's affair is that the law enforcement agencies should just be fair to everybody, because like you rightly said, Dasuki and so many other people were taken to court. They were not handcuffed, and Olisa Metu was taken to court in handcuffs. If you are just an unbiased player, you would want to question why the major suspect in this case is Dasuki. Is it because probably he's from a royal background? Well, I do not know the facts. My position is the enforcement agencies should just be fair to everybody.
The first story here of particular interest to me it's coming from the Senate. It says Ekweremadu loses bid to stop judgments. That's on page 3. There's been a hula baloo in the Senate from the last quarter of last year. I mean, to the missing budget. There's been several issues back and forth. Now, on the Deputy Senate stance, what's your take on it?
Bayelsa election was won by Dixon, a PDP. There were no hula baloos. There was an APC federal government. It didn't interfere. Nobody is saying that. So if he lost at the court, I do not think there's anything special to that. A lot of people have been accusing APC of probably and not the rest of them. But the Bayelsa case was a clear example that there is no interference. Dixon won. They have the apparatus. If they wanted to rig the election, they would rig the election, declare Sylvia their candidate as the winner. But we could see some element of transparency. I think Nigerians should just believe the government of the day has the interests of Nigerians at heart, that there are some things that are wrong. And in trying to correct it, a lot of people, especially PDP, for example, I'm sorry to say, PDP will never be happy with whatever step APC is taking. Olisa Metu, I have respect for all the politicians and all the rest of them, but sometimes I see these people, when they talk as if people on the other side of the divide don't even have sense to analyze, to dissect issues and things like that. When you are talking to Nigerians, you should know that Nigerians, majority of them on this side, who are neither PDP or APC, are far more intelligent than most of them who are in the political setting. So when they are talking, they should be very careful the way they talk to Nigeria, because that is what informs. The election, like I tell people, was just a protest against a party that had the opportunity of ruling for 16 good years, and people don't have anything to show for it. Believe me honestly, if APC also made the same mistake of not meeting the demands of the people, the same people that orchestrated and engineered the sacking of PDP, they are still alive. And in fact, the generation, the political youths of this time, they don't have the time, they are not too patient to give you 8 years. If you fail in 4 years' time, they will mobilize. They are on the social media 24 hours. They are networking. They are connecting, and they are desperate to make a change. They will also flush out any political party that does not meet the aspirations of Nigeria, because the journey is becoming too long to the promised land.
Moving on to the next paper, I have here the Authority. The major headline here says, Senators query 3.9 billion naira for Aso Rock renovation. Senators query 3.9 billion naira for Aso Rock renovation. And the writer here says, poses over another 1.7 billion naira allocation for presidency. Lawmakers declare 5 pages missing in appropriation bill. You find details of the stories on page 2 of the Authority. Ndibo condemn Olisa Metu's court appearance in handcuffs. Ndibo condemn Olisa Metu's court appearance in handcuffs. Details you find on page 4 of the Authority. Buhari governor's 2016 deadline for polio eradication. Details on page 4 of the Authority. We don't know the Suki's whereabouts. Family lawyer says family and lawyer. You find details on page 6. Court sends Kano to Kuje prison. Details on page 2. Then, Barrister, senators query 3.9 billion naira for Asu Rock innovation. I heard some senators saying that this is not a budget of change. What's your view on that?
I've actually not been opportune to scrutinize the entire budget. But if I, as a student of Nigerian politics, 3.9 billion naira for renovation.
And another one allocation for presidency.
I think I would query, why do we constantly have to spend so much money in renovating Aso Rock anytime there's a new president? Yaradua did the same thing. Jonathan did the same thing. And this APC that we all says we believe is a party of change should also not do the same line. But like I said, I've not had the opportunity of scrutinizing the entire budget to know how factual those figures are.
But considering the economic situation, you think this is not good for?
No, it is absolutely not good. I will be very honest with you. I mean, they should be able to prune down expenditure at certain level, because we all must sacrifice, because the budget and the economic reality is that a lot of Nigerians, all Nigerians will be called to sacrifice. And so one of the ways we all should be able to sacrifice for the health of this nation is that everybody must reduce their cost. You must be able to prune down your cost so that the nation can be healthy, because if you spend such amount of money on renovation, on feeding, and cutting of grasses in Aso Rock, it only means you are reducing amount of money available for infrastructural development.
Quickly, you've said something about this Me Too before, but I'm looking at the perspective of Ndibo condemning the way he went to court. But the MPS, that's Nigerian prison spokesman Francis, said that the officer in charge, he has his discretion to how he goes to court. But do you think the agitation for this Ndibo condemning it, do you think it's okay?
I think I wished I brought the speech delivered by Chukwuma Kadini Nziogu on January 16, 1966, January 15, when they were overthrowing the political regime. I read it about 3-4 days ago. He said the major problem of Nigeria in 1966 were these politicians, profiteers.
And then we had no democracy whatsoever.
Yes,
we had no democracy.
Who took 10%, tribalists who want to divide us on the basis of tribalism and all the rest of them. I think these ethnic organizations should rather concern themselves with generating creative ideas as to how to add value. But each time they align and side children that they feel are our own, even when it is very, very obvious that these guys, before their pronouncement by the court has been guilty, have been, violated one law or the other, or conducted themselves in an indecent manner, we should be civilized enough not to, to just align ourselves with your children, because it sometimes the Afenifere will come because a Yoruba man is involved and is being questioned for abusing his office. They would support him. The Hausa man will come and support. I think we should abandon those lifestyles.
So it's not about where the person comes from. It's about whether it is right.
Yes.
It is right to do so or not.
Yes, we should forget about once your child offends the law or violate any part of the law, please comport yourself, because most times when you issue out press statements, it has a way of nauseating some people. Just what caliber of people are there? Is it because the man is from the Igbo tribe? He has done what is wrong. Let's wait for the outcome of the investigation. That's the only way this country can progress.
Yeah. The family of Dasuki and his lawyer says they don't know his whereabouts.
I do not think Dasuki is not there. Dasuki is political part of Dasuki is not a wrong purpose. Better God, anybody can do it. I know that it's in the corridors of security. I don't think there's anything wrong.
But for the story of Dasuki to have made the front headlines of what paper is that of the authority, don't you think to an extent it might be a bit of politics coming into play? I mean, I got confused yesterday when I heard security agencies and top parastatals are in search of Dasuki, even the court. I was a bit disturbed because some persons were like, let's see how far this corruption fight would go. For people who what's the word now? I'm being careful with my choice of words. For people who are supposedly APC by heart and PDP by body and soul, APC by heart. So I was a bit confused and a bit disturbed yesterday when I heard Dasuki wasn't found, or they are in search of Dasuki. Isn't there a bit of politics coming into play, or you think everything is still going on normal and well?
If you are a student of what you expect people from the opposition party to say about the APC government that gave them a political knockout? You want them to give the president or APC a standing ovation? There is nothing, I'm telling you honestly, quote me, there is nothing between now and 2019 that Buhari or APC will do at the federal government level
that the PDP
will applaud. That is the main business of opposition.
But is that healthy for the democracy? Are they not supposed to work together?
Work together, no. You are constantly supposed to bring out the flaws and the failure. It doesn't matter. That's politics.
But it wasn't any different.
No, but constructively.
That's in civilized climate. If you watch, look, if you are a student of politics, look at the robust debate in the British Parliament. If you look at it, you want to be a politician. Not this. Sometimes the criticisms are so shallow.
They have no facts.
No facts. These guys are just talking from both sides of their mouth. Sometimes I switch off my television when I see some of these politicians talking. Yes.
But was it any different in the last administration when the PDP was in government and APC was in opposition? Of course, the APC antagonized the PDP to the fore.
Yes.
But they were always coming up with different points. They were always coming up with different bases for criticism.
Yes.
So if we're seeing the APC criticizing, if I see the PDP rather criticizing the APC now, it shouldn't be strange to us. That's why we have an opposition. And for me, I think to an extent, it's healthy for our democracy. It puts you on your toes.
That's the work of, but you see, the work of an opposition is simply to constantly offer alternative ideas as to how things should be done.
Okay.
That's the purpose of opposition. You constantly criticize the procedures adopted by a ruling party and offer, in your own opinion, what you think is a superior approach. And what you simply do is you are positioning yourself that in case the people are dissatisfied with this approach, they should remember that you have offered an alternative which you think is better. And the people will judge whether your suggestions or opinion or school of thought actually, subscribes to a higher form of argument or opinion. When in civilized climate, unlike our politics, I said, listening to Nigerian politicians very well, PDP spokesperson, or the rest of them. Sometimes their line of thoughts, the argument sometimes is shallow, is porous, and very childish sometimes. Very childish. From both sides, or even when APC was also there. I'm not biased against any party. But like I said, Because in civilized climate, if you watch their debates, when the opposition is debating and they are questioning and scrutinizing and pressurizing the other party, you will know that they are doing this for the interests of the nation. British, this present British Prime Minister wanted to, which of the countries? He wanted to go to Syria. Syria. He took it to the parliament to debate, and you could see the robust, opposition to why you should take us. What's the interest of UK, Britain in Syria? We are not threatened.
What do we stand to benefit?
What do we stand to benefit? Why do you endanger? At the end of the day, his argument failed to carry the parliament along, and that was how.
The end of it.
That was the end of it. But the debate was robust and very scientific. It wasn't childish, like we do in this part of the climate. Just run them down.
So our politicians has a lot to learn.
Yes, they do so much.
Our democracy is still growing, so we do think that over time we would get there. Even if we're not there 100%, we'll be there at least 60%.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Guardian newspaper, there's several stories here, but this one is very interesting. It says 2016 budget can't work. Why? Find out from page 6 of the Guardian. The writer says senators cite shrinking oil revenue, high debt profile, no equity in projects votes. Reps differ, one speedy passage. That's on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. British envoy gives condition for repatriating stolen funds to Nigeria. That's on page 8. They are repatriating stolen funds to Nigeria. British envoy is giving conditions for that. 2 condemned to death by hanging over future ex-VC's murder. That's on page 13. 2 people have been condemned to death by hanging over future ex-VC's murder. That's on page 13. Okay, this is on health. It says, read alert on safety of herbal Viagras. That's on page 29. I'd like to talk about the budget, the 2016 budget. She did make mention of the fact that the cost for renovating the presidential villa is quite alarming, and you affirmed to it. But should it not be of concern to us now, on the 21st of January 2016, we're still talking about the budget. It hasn't been passed yet to the Senate for them to debate upon it. If the cost for renovating Aso Rock, for instance, is overwhelming, and the cost for vehicles and so many other overhead activities are overwhelming, it is the place of the Senate, members of the Senate, to debate on this, cut down on what they're supposed to cut down on, and then forward the copies that has been, doctored to the presidency, and not sit down and, put up, some persons would say media propaganda, some persons would say comic play, not sit down and then, chit-chat and rant about this is too much, this is too small, we're not doing this. Don't you think they're supposed to have gotten to work, put these things together, cut down on what you don't want, send it to the president, same thing for the reps, instead of going round and back and forth. I just need to get your opinion and your viewpoints.
Government is partnership. That is why you have checks and balances. And there's nothing wrong if the Federal Executive Council sends, the executive arm of government sends a budget to the Legislative House, because they have the oversight function of how you can spend Nigerians' money. They could suggest as to, why don't you think we reduce here so that we can have more money for capital votes and all the rest of them. But the challenge we've had over the years is that even the National Assembly, sometimes when the budget comes, it's an opportunity for them to overbloat their own expenditure. They infuse so many expenditure. In fact, they even award themselves constituency projects, which is never done in any democracy. Legislators are to make laws. They do not execute contract. It's only in this part of the world that anything goes. The legislators are awarding contract. They say this one is constituency project. They infuse their own idea of project that they want in their constituency into it and force it down the throat of the executive, because ultimately they have the oversight function of how you can spend our money and things like that. It ought not to be. They should take the interests of Nigerians at heart. If any part of the budget you think is overbloated, you have a right as representing the people to say, look, if you use so much amount of money renovating the assembly, the Aso Rock, where do we get money to tar the roads? Where do we get money to build schools? Where do we get money to put infrastructure for the well-being of the people? That is the kind of debate that I want to see, where people would believe that, you're pointing out an error in the budget is because you think it is not in the interest of the nation.
Objectivity.
Objectivity, yes.
But it's of another concern to me in the sense that you just talked about, yes, so many persons might want to award contracts to their constituency and so on. And of course, Senate doesn't have the sole rights, but to an extent they have the rights. But the executive, which happens to be the presidency, he has the powers to call to order a lot of issues that are going around the Senate if they are going wrongly. Although the Senate is a body of its own. But then my own concern is, looking at the budget, if the president is awarding so amount for the renovation of Aso Rock, a lot of persons have said, okay, he has the interest of Nigeria at heart, which the international community has commended. Don't you think to an extent he might have reasons for why he's allocating such amount for the renovation of Aso Rock? Looking at his personality and his body language. I'm just using Aso Rock as an example.
I know. You know, sometimes when these budgets are prepared and people blame the president and all the rest of them, there are so many things. The president can't just sit down and write renovation of Aso Rock, 3.something billion naira and all the rest of them. They have offices, they have departments, they have personnel that are, those ones are on the ground. It's like the managing director of a company. How many departments can you oversee? You have heads of department that will bring in their requirement for the quarter or for the year. They scrutinize it probably through a process. Say, okay, why do you think you need 10 computers? And last year we bought you about 10 computers. Have they all broken down? No, we need, because we just employed 3 additional people, we just employed 5 additional staff, and we need computers for them. So there's a rigorous process of budget defense before it's collated to a whole budget and all the rest of it. So if there's an error, whether typographical and all the rest of them, I think it is the responsibility of those presenting the budget to have done their homework properly to know that, look, I hope we understand the mood of Nigerians. Because let me tell you this, if you tell me as a managing director of an establishment that you are going to reduce staff salary because the cash flow can no longer sustain our present salary, I also want to see you also sacrifice. You can't be buying brand new cars and jetting all over the world with your wife and buying houses all over the world, and you keep coming to tell us in a management meeting that we do not have money, and I keep seeing you changing fleets of cars and all the rest of them. But it will demotivate you.
But do you think the budget needed to get to the National Assembly before withdrawing it to make this? I thought our president was sensitive enough. Ali, I'm sure you must have gone through the budget before he submitted.
The president, the volume, if you see one volume of it, I tell you, the president may not have had the time to go through the entire gamut of that budget. It's not possible. The president, he has aides, he has assistants. He could just see and get his office. What are we budgeting? He could just tell them the broad policy outline. Like, look, as the executive, as the president who came on a mantra of change, I want to see us devote so much money to capital development, more roads being constructed. I want a railway. I want education refurbished. I want health system and all. So please, in computing this budget, I want us to devote about 30% to budget to education, about 30% to health, about 20% to this and things like that. That is the broad policy outline. He would lay. The back staffs will sit down and translate that vision into it. So the president will not be sitting down and be adding this and that. They have technical staffs. There's a permanent secretary in the State House who would have known what do we need in Aso Rock for this next 4 years and things like that, or this year. So they are going to be the one. But like I said, in situations like this, if you are very sensitive to public opinion, you should impress it on your staff. I do not want any error, because if we make any blunder, Nigerians will not forgive us, and there are certain things we should not do. If we are calling for a budget if we are calling for Nigerians to be prudent and to sacrifice, they also must see that we are also sacrificing our place. So don't let us have an over-bloated Aso Rock expenditure pattern.
Vice Chairman, very quickly, I want to find out something from you. Looking at all of this, we are convinced that there were inadequacies in the budget. Now we are convinced that there were mistakes, errors here and there. Now some persons, there are like 3 different clients. A particular client would say that this was meant to expose the inadequacies of the past administration. Fine, then the president never came to the National Assembly for a proper budget presentation. Some would say it's expressing the inadequacies of the executive, that's the current administration. Some would say the Senate are in a wrong